the vision to connect the students across India's educational institutes to a nationalistic thought process and to harness their collective potential towards the aim of national reconstruction. We, as a pan-India organization, have been striving to bring together the best talents and minds of the country and infuse in them a nation-first attitude to develop in them a solution-oriented thinking process and to inspire young India to serve the society. Today, we all have been honored with the presence of Aditi Maheshwari Goyal ma'am, who is a recognized figure in the Indian publishing sector. Ma'am holds master's degrees in English literature from Delhi University and a business management degree from Strathclyde Business School, Scotland, and a pre-doctoral degree in social science from Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. She also holds a diploma in public relations and advertising. She heads the Department of Copyrights and Translation at Vani Prakashan and is the managing trustee and executive director at Vani Foundation. Today, ma'am is going to discuss with us about the Indian self-dependent publishing houses to know the importance of how publication is laying foundation of an Atmanirbhar Bharat. So let us welcome our respected guest who will help us recognize of how our country is establishing or needs to establish a Atmanirbhar Prakashan. Over to you, ma'am.
Namaste. Thank you, Rubal, for a very generous introduction. And thank you, Think India, for having me over. आज होली के इस पावन पर्व पर सबसे पहले आप सभी को शुभकामनाएं पहुंचाऊं। होली का महत्व ही ये है कि हम नए शुरुआत की ओर बढ़ते हैं और त्यजते हैं वो सब जो त्यजने लायक है, एक समाज के तौर पर, एक व्यक्ति के तौर पर। तो इस नई शुरुआत के साथ हम आज का सेशन शुरू करते हैं। The idea of publishing gained momentum way back in 16th century when the recorded history, especially in the English language, suggests that in the 16th century Britain, when religion and empire were trying to come together and propagate their ideas to the world, the whole idea of a publishing house emerged from there. And one of the oldest publishing houses or printing presses later in 18th century gained momentum when the religious texts needed to be reproduced for a larger chunk of population readership, so that the ideas from the court would travel down through the church to the general public. Although the publishing history of the Indian subcontinent is very much related to the Raj and our quest to oppose the Raj, our quest to become Swatantra, our quest to become Swayamyayi, our quest to become Atmanirbhar. There is some network glitch. If I may request the moderator to please help me because it is distracting me a bit. There is some pulse sound that is coming as I speak. Is it normal? Is it okay? Or do I?
No, ma'am, that's with WebEx itself only. So yeah.
Okay, fine. Also, the screen has shrunk, so I can barely see any one of you. The screen has minimized. I think it's got to do with Safari. It's not very friendly with Safari. Anyways, so I hope I'm audible and I'm able to reach out to all of you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So coming to the publishing history of our country, we are blessed with various languages. We are blessed with over 22 national languages, which have had very active print, public opinion, debate, discussion, cultures which have stood on their own and have represented a cultural hemisphere of their own, and the languages have been so rich in the way they have lent themselves to the whole concept of continuity of a nation, whole concept of consciousness, whole consciousness, the concept of a nation state that is a representation of so many ideas put together called India. So our publishing history is rich like that, where the religion, the state nexus, the way the West propagated it, does not really essentially work in our case. So it has essentially been a voice of the Janta. Our publishing history has essentially represented the voices of the margins, the people at the margins, जिसे हम हाशिए का संसार कहते हैं. Our publishing history has been endowed with breakthrough moments like the one brought in by Dada Saab Phalke, uh, Raja Ravi Verma, when they set up the first studio, the first German printing press, uh, when they democratized the whole idea of religion, when they democratized the whole idea of spiritual texts, when they democratized the whole idea of caste system, and they brought gods to the general public. They brought higher ideas to the general public. So you see, publishing history has not been a controlling factor in our country. The publishing history of our country is largely about opening up the ideas, is largely about enabling people to look at their country, their nation, their nationhood as a whole. And of course, when we talk about 20th century, we talk about Mahatma Gandhi, we talk about Lohia, we talk about Ambedkar, we talk about our national heroes who brought together uh, so many linguistic hemispheres, who brought together so many political hemispheres through books, through newspapers, through ideas that were printed and that were sent out in the public. So this publishing history has seen several stalwarts like um, Naval Kishore Press, that was the biggest press of early 20th century, late 19th century in India. Naval Kishore Press was responsible initially for printing the civil service examination question papers that the British Raj wanted to print and use for recruiting uh, able officers to work for their government in India. But gradually, Naval Kishore Press took the mantle of textbook publishing and was responsible for unifying so many schools, primary schools, and the um, initial higher education institutions, creating textbooks for these institutions. You see, we didn't have CBSE board, ICSE board, etc. In the early 20th century or late 19th century. So it was the role of these printing presses. They were really the cultural, intellectual hubs to produce literature that would contribute to creating a unified youth against the Raj, essentially. So you see, Allahabad is the bench of nationalist struggle. Allahabad is the bench where we see a lot of action. Um, Now Prayagraj, of course, a lot of action against the Raj, and a lot of legal battles were fought against the Raj and were won. And there was a reason behind it, because that was also the seat of this amazing printing press that was doing phenomenal work at that time. Although I can go on and on about our publishing history and how we are self-reliant in a way that publishing sector essentially doesn't receive any kind of I would say any kind of um, grant or any kind of endowment from any government institution in that way. It's a pretty self-reliant business model in our country. There are so many languages, and there are as many public spheres, as many intellectual spheres, and therefore as many printing and publishing cultures. So when we are talking about Atmanirbhar Prakashan, we are essentially talking about a process of knowledge creation that is self-reliant, and that does cater to the society. It contributes in building the nation because it supplies the intellectual materials that are if I was sitting in a UK based university, this study would essentially come under the material culture studies, the study of a book, the anthropology, ethnography of a book. So when I'm talking about a publishing house, when I'm talking about a self-reliant publishing house or self-reliant publishing process, I'm essentially talking about the process of knowledge or intellectual property creation that is such an important part of our society, that is such an important part of our social and moral DNA. So when we are talking about Atmanirbharta today in our country, we are actually talking about fervor to not only understand our own ground, our own history, which is so rich. We are also talking about international future. So when, for example, our honorable Prime Minister speaks about Atmanirbharta as a campaign, I essentially understand that it is more than a campaign. It is reigniting age-old Indian philosophy that Mr. Modi has very, very passionately succeeded in doing, especially with the youth of the country. That the concept has been around as a part of our as a part of our historical understanding of our own society and culture. At the same time, he has opened gateways towards the world, wherein we are open to collaborations, we are open to internationalism, we are open to global collaborations without giving up on our own grounds, without giving up on our own value systems. For example, I am essentially a Hindi language publisher, yet I am dealing with so many international publishing houses. I am selling the copyrights to translation of my books. I'm buying so many copyrights for translation of their books. So all this international cooperation has been possible because we are somewhere very confident about our own work. We are somewhere confident about our own modus operandi, and then we are doing this international trade, which is fabulous. So Atmanirbharta for me as a publishing house, therefore, will be about of course, number one, being brave, uh, about and about not uh, losing out my vision, not losing my vision from my goal, being brave enough to aim high. That is Atmanirbharta for me. Number two, Atmanirbharta for me will be about lending support and creating a support group ecosystem. For example, it is high time that a Hindi language publishing house knew what a Bengali language publishing house is doing in terms of producing best books. And can those books travel to Hindi? And can the books that are published in a Hindi language publishing house travel to a Bengali reading culture? So, are these exchanges, are these translations happening? Uh, can we support them more? Can we look at down south towards Malayalam, Tamil, Telugu? Can we look at their literatures, and can we exchange our literatures with them? Can we look at Marathi? Can we look at Rajasthani? So Atmanirbharta for me is not so self-centered. It is also about creating a cooperative ecosystem with Atmanirbhar Prakashans of my own kind. uh, I am in a beautiful country of so many languages, so many literatures. Why not exchange them? And why not create a great list? For example, um, Mahadevi Varma and Mahashweta Devi, they were almost writing at the same time. Mahashweta Devi was writing in Bengali, Mahadevi Varma was writing in Hindi. Um, it's just so beautiful. It is just so beautiful that Mahashweta Devi, who is a Bengali stalwart, has become our own in Hindi through translations. We read her as passionately as we read Mahadevi Varma. Mahadevi Varma's anniversary was just 2 days ago, and we were talking about the movement of which she was hugely a part of, that is Chayavad in Hindi. And we were fondly remembering how Mahadevi Varma's contribution to the age needs to be revisited and needs to be relooked at. Well, at the same time, I thought that why not talk about Mahashweta Devi at the same time, who was a Bengali stalwart and who became Hindi's own through translations. Similarly, so many beautiful books from Malayalam have traveled to Hindi, and from I know for sure that, for example, Nirmal Verma, Prem Chand, they became Malayalam's own through translation into Malayali. So this is the beauty of our country. This is the Atmanirbharta of our country, that we can exchange and we can create our own peer and support group. Atmanirbharta, thirdly and lastly, for me, will be about also raising a voice, um, about raising the concerns of my ground, raising the concerns about my peer group and support group. So Atmanirbharta also enables us to raise questions. Atmanirbharta is also about asking valid questions that concerns the society or that concerns our group together. So, for example, when we talk about publishing, the very recent example I'd like to put forth in front of you, now that you are going to be in full-time careers very soon, when you'll be finishing your latest degrees. I wouldn't say education because it never ends. It's an ongoing process throughout life. For example, when the GST was introduced, which was a path-breaking um, move by the government, uh, the implication of the implication of the taxation law, of this taxation law, was is actually continues to be slightly hazy, slightly problematic in the publishing sphere. So although there is no GST on the sales or purchase of the books yet, um, GST is levied on everything that is related to the book production process, that is related to the book manufacturing and transportation process. So when we are talking about fault line here, we are talking about, I wouldn't go in details, it will take hours, but I also wrote for a couple of portals for this problem, that the publishing houses in the country are paying GST at each step of manufacturing of the books. But because there is no GST on the sales and purchase of the books, this there is no way the reverse charge is earned. So there is no way this money that has been spent is coming back into the system, because there is absolutely no header in the sales category for a GST. So when we're talking about Atmanirbharta, we are also talking about raising a concern, because then we are not very centrist, no, that's a wrong word actually. Then we are not very self-centered. That's what I meant. We're not very self-centered about our concerns. We are talking about our community as a whole. So this concern is raised by many publishing houses, and I'm sure the government is working on it. Atmanirbharta is about creating this able ecosystem of exchange of ideas. So when I'm speaking about Atmanirbhar Prakashan, I'm actually inviting all of you young minds out there to look at this whole process of knowledge creation in a very holistic, um, number one, number two, in a very able, and number three, in a very self-reliant way. I'd take a pause and I'd request if there are any questions or if there is any particular point or area that you'd like me to discuss regarding publication or regarding intellectual property or its management, legally, socially, whatever, please do.
Yes, ma'am. Uh, do publication houses have a right to break contracts simply because of difference in ideology, as it happened in case of the book Delhi riots? Why do and also why do international publication houses and international media, for that matter, act and execute as a judge and jury?
Very good question. Very good question. See, when we're talking about a legally binding contract, the copyright contract, it has to be the solemnity of it has to be respected in any condition. Unless, if you ask me, I would tell you that unless the law of my land, unless my honorable Supreme Court or my honorable High Court doesn't instruct me to step back from the book, doesn't instruct me to leave the book midway, I would never do it. At the same time, I also have to keep in mind the larger good of the country and society as in my purview, in whatever publications I try to produce. So, as a publishing house, I think we, as editors, as strategy managers, we have to look at the manuscript and we have to look at how true is that manuscript to itself. How faithful is that effort towards itself? So, for example, the case you've quoted here, the Delhi riots book, um, I would, number one, point out that unless the court would have instructed, I wouldn't see any reason for the publishing house to step back from the book. Number two, I wouldn't even see why the author should suffer. Because once the book is in the middle of a process, it's actually the relationship from both the ends, from the publishing house, from the author. Why should any one of them suffer? So if a publishing house has to take a political stand, it might as well take that stand before commissioning the book. So once you've committed to it, I would walk the line and finish my bridge walking. Now, number two question that you asked was why the publications passed the judgment before. Again, my answer would be nothing matters before the court or the legal system or the legal system's word. Nothing matters in front of it. So I have complete faith in my judiciary. I have complete faith in in my judicial system. If it would instruct that the book shouldn't see the sun, I would give up at that point. But if it doesn't instruct me to give up on the book, I would make sure that it sees through the process. So that would be my take, that we have to respect the law of the land. And unless it feels otherwise, the book has to be seen through. I have. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So, issues to be faced while, what are the issues to be faced while publishing? Dinesh asked it. Dinesh, I would request you to kindly be a bit more specific, because issues are several, like in any work area. The issues with publishing are numerous. You are talking about operations, human resource, you're talking about um, ideology related problems, you're talking about gender issues in publishing houses or publishing industry. So if you can be a bit more specific, I can help you. Meanwhile, are there any more questions?
Yes, ma'am. Do indie publication houses lag behind because of their lacking funds and their inability to sponsor events, due to which they don't receive the publicity they deserve?
Okay. So there are two ways to answer this question. Number one is that the independent Indian languages publishing houses are catering to a very language specific market. Anna. So, for example, we are talking about Marathi publishing. So, of course, they have only one state to themselves. They are, or maybe some institutions that are teaching Marathi, or maybe some schools that are teaching in Marathi, or have Marathi as a media of instruction. Other than that, the publishing house in that language wouldn't have access to a larger market that international conglomerates that are publishing in English, especially, have an access to. So the world is their market. Essentially, they are billing their product into every currency of the world. So you see, their market is humongous compared to Indian languages publishing houses. Yet, uh, please mark my words that I'm saying hence. Yet, the independent Indian language publishing has been brave, has been very creative, innovative in and self um, adaptive in because it has survived all financial fluxes in last 75 years of independent India. You talk about riots, you talk about wars, you talk about influx of global investment into Indian market. You talk about FDI that supports international publishing houses. You talk about the online sales that is more of a 21st century phenomena. You talk about the Great Depression that hit us in 2009-10. You talk about COVID that we are still into. The Indian language publishing has been very innovative, very brave, so much so that, you know, we have really not given up um, on our say team, on our books, on our authors. In fact, if I have to give you statistics, there's a story that I'm working on right now. About six new publishing houses are born in Hindi language alone during and after the pandemic, after the lockdown. So you see, the language publishing, even when it's so restricted in its outreach, in its market area, in its territory, it has been essentially very self-sustaining, and it's high time that the government starts looking at it more creatively, because it is the most creatively charged industry of the country. Now you talked about the publicity and lack of funds. When I'm talking about innovative and creative, trust me, with shoestring budgets, the Indian independent publishing houses have been doing fabulous job. They are the cultural hubs of their language systems. So even though the funds are not as much as the international conglomerates, yet the Pustak Sanskriti that we talk about, the Vidya Sanskriti of our society, they are hinged with these independent publishing houses. So they are playing a huge cultural role in binding the nation. Um, Especially now with social media, which is a very low investment mode of advertising, marketing. Look at how the Indian languages publishing houses have used these platforms to reach out to the readers, to reach out to audience that they never knew existed. So we are really, 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 we are habitual of working in shoestring budgets. So there is a fun saying that I believe in, and I keep repeating it so that you understand our frame of mind as publishers and editors. Is that publishers live in matchboxes for a house, and they have palaces as their warehouse. So we are so passionate about our books. For example, um, if a publishing house has published over 7,000 titles, you know, and each title has been picked through careful scrutiny, through generations of love and relationship with the author, uh, a publishing house, Indian languages publishing house essentially, would never let that book go out of print, even though it was a bad seller or a slow seller. So the passion that is attached to the books, the passion that is attached to the Vidya Sanskriti is very different from the commercial and financial decisions that the conglomerates take essentially on the basis of the balance sheets. So it works very differently for us. Even if a book is not selling well for, say, 10 years, and I have never met an Indian language publishing house owner or an editor saying that we need to return these books to the author because they are not selling. So I think you can very much make out the difference here. So it's all about passion. Really, we feel at times it's not about the money. Although yes, it's slightly unfair a game, because when you are competing with the publishing houses that are drawing their funds essentially from each currency of the world, to a publishing house that is drawing its funds from one territory, one state, one region, maybe three states, four states, for example, in case of Hindi, yet you are able to thrive, you are able to celebrate the books. So that spirit has to be respected. And we are a teeming billion. We are going to be trillion economy very soon. I really hope books get their due in the society again. So this Vidya Sanskriti or Pustak Sanskriti that we are talking about has to become the center of the intellectual universe again. I think then we have nothing to worry about then. So I have some questions. When can we see ourselves becoming completely Atmanirbhar? What is your opinion on present freedom of expression, and how do you look at it in terms of publishing houses? So, Siri Sriram, thank you for the question. Um, I think the freedom of expression is hugely misrepresented today. I feel that one's freedom of expression cannot be a, a bane for the other. So, I wouldn't name anyone, but uh, the Sahishruta Asahishruta debate, I have seen both the sides of the coins very closely. Um, and let me tell you that open debate, uh, I have seen it going down the drain. I've seen it failing on so many occasions, because the so-called intellectuals have refrained from confronting some pointed questions in last 7 years, maybe. So the freedom of expression is essentially misrepresented. It has to be balanced for both the parties. It has to be it has to be uh, a respect. It has to be a amalgamation of respect and responsibility, actually, towards the rights of the others as well, which, as we see in as we've seen just 24 hours ago, uh, without checking history, how we pass judgment on history. It has happened, and again, it happens every day. So, freedom of expression, yes, you've picked a very, very pointed question. It's very, very problematic in today's world. And how do you look at it in terms of publishing houses? I just answered that question, I think, as a part of the Delhi riot question. Um, my freedom of expression, for example, my in the sense XYZ, anyone's freedom of expression has to be in accordance with the rule of the land. It cannot disrespect any of my legal responsibilities towards my fellow citizens. As far as that has been taken care of, I shouldn't be worried about voicing whatever I have to say. So, truth is the key. Stay truthful. From Divya Prakash, how can we overcome the problem of wrong fact writing as a publisher? Yes, Divya, yes, very, very important. It has to be vetted. Whatever has to undergo print has to be vetted. The author has to take moral responsibility. The author has to take legal responsibility of what they're writing. It's a part of the standard copyright contract that we make sure is signed with the author before we, because it also binds us um, monetarily, legally, morally to the book and author. And likewise, the author has to take responsibility of what they're writing. I think there's a very fine line between between uh, between fact and fiction. Uh, for example, most publishing houses, I don't know in Hindi, but in English, they make sure that the books go through legal vetting, which I do with political books, personally at Vani. There, I make sure that my legal team goes through it once before we commit to the book. So legal vetting is really, really important. And I think all publishing houses should take this more seriously, because in the third decade of 21st century India, we are definitely living in different times, which needs different kind of attention towards books and their legal value. So, coming to the next one, Ankit Chauhan, do we see publishing industry on a declining mode due to people switching to online modes such as Kindle? If yes, is it because of Western culture of preferring soft copies to hard copies? And if this trend of switching to online mode continues, are we staring at a possible disappearance of landmark literature such as Gaban or Godan? So, Ankit, uh, first thing first, when you're talking about online publishing, I would like to clarify that this is a form of publishing. So, for example, at my publishing house, we are publishing in three formats. We are publishing in print, we are publishing in ebooks, first digital format, and we are publishing in audiobooks as well, the second digital format. So, and of course, in the near future, we are looking at hybrid publishing, where we are looking at smart books that you will be able to read on your tab and also listen to some important stanzas, or maybe if it's a book on music, you will, and it is talking about some Thundri or Dadra, you will be able to listen to those ragas right there. So these are the kind of smart hybrid books we are talking about. So this is a form of publishing. So a publishing house is no more just publishing. Updated high-tech publishing house is not publishing in print only. Number one. Number two, all these three formats of publishing, and in near future the four formats, will be walking parallel to each other. I remember way back in 2009 when ebooks were just entering the market, there was this huge debate about whether the print will go out of fashion or whether the print would be the history, whether the print culture would lose its ground. Trust you me, the print runs have almost doubled in last 10 years. I think we are in the golden age of readership right now. I don't think India ever read as much as it is doing now. So, thanks to the young guns like you, we are witnessing a deep increase in the readership. So, and okay, um, at the same time, when I'm talking about readership, I'm just not talking about the people who are sitting with the printed book. I'm talking about Kindle, Google Play Book readership. I'm also talking about people who are accessing audiobooks and reading them through the audio format. So, this brings us to the question, a very, very important question that I want you to ponder on, is that what is a book then? Are Is the concept of a book only about the text that remains in between the two covers? Is this what we call book? Or any concrete idea that can stand on its own and can relate to the history and can connect with the future while interpreting the present? Present an idea in a comprised, in a comprehensive way. So please do think about the idea of a book. So a book has transformed dramatically in last 2 decades, and it is undergoing constant change as we are talking, because we have already seen smart books for education purposes being used for the students with special abilities. So you never know that tomorrow we are not going to see the traditional books in the traditional format anymore. We are going to have more creative and innovative books. We are going to have, for example, print book that are playing with the color technology, that are playing with the 1D, 2D, 3D technology, that are playing with, you never know how many ways a page can be experimented with. You never know how many ways a digital format can be experimented with. So to clarify, a publishing house is just not about the printed books. A publishing house is about publishing intellectual property in as many media, in as many formats as possible. And Western culture, oh, okay, I have to tell you, in 2013, when I was attending the London Book Fair, we do that every year, but 2013 is slightly special for a reason that I'm going to just tell you. I was at the London Book Fair, and there is a annual bookseller debate that used to happen there. So it was a huge hall, and it was a huge auditorium in which about 200 participants were invited, and it was an open turncoat. It was an open turncoat debate, wherein in 2013 the topic was whether Amazon is a friend or a foe of the publishing industry. So we had representation from Amazon, we had representation from the Booksellers Guild of UK, and they both presented their case. And the most beautiful thing about this debate is that immediately after the debate, each one of the audience is supplied with a red stick and a green stick. So we are asked to vote on the spot as to what we feel about the entire debate. You wouldn't believe 78.8% people voted that Amazon is the foe of the publishing industry. So you can very well imagine that what the West thinks about the online distribution of books. Western culture, honestly, is very passionate about books as well. It will be very wrong for us to say that Western culture is not about books. Western culture is so much about so many other things that are not good in society. Western culture is equally responsible for its publishing industry, is equally responsible for the propagation of ideas and intellectual knowledge in their society. So, what is West? Please don't ghettoize the West as a one singular category. West is so many other things. West is Europe, West is UK, West is the Africa, West is the America. So let's talk about specific cultures. And because I work with them, I have my literary agents in New York, I have my literary agent in London, I work with literary agents sitting in Shanghai. They are very passionate about books, and they are doing some brilliant authors. They are working on some brilliant authors and some brilliant portfolios. So I think we have to learn a lot from them, how to represent the best of our culture, our languages to the world. We have to learn a lot of professionalism from them. So, and the last part of your question is, are we staring? No, not at all. Premchand is not going anywhere. Godan, Gaban, these are the stories. I mean, uh, classical literature becomes more classic with each generation. And as I said that our data that we collect at the World Book Fair, New Delhi World Book Fair at Pragati Maidan each year, for example, it it shows that the youngsters are reading quite a lot. We are seeing deep increase in readership, online, offline, either ways. So the good thing is we are fine as far as youngsters like you are reading. And trust me, you guys are reading a lot. So it's very reassuring. We are not worried about the books, the future of books in our country. I think they are in safe hands with you guys. Um, can government ban any book? If yes, then it is absolutely violation of fundamental right to speak. Well, the government can't ban, the courts can ban. The legal, as I said, the judicial system might as well do it if it feels that a particular publication hampers with any of the fundamental rights of the citizen of the country, and is not in favor of the democratic and secular framework of our country. So it's not, I don't think it's the government, I think it's the legal machinery. So the court, the honorable courts, they are of a very key importance here. Aditya Mehrotra, what's your view on self-publishing for a growing author who's a beginner? Which mode should be preferred, self or from good publishing house? Okay, uh, uh, self-publishing has helped exploration, has helped discoverability of many young and new authors. If not even young, if they are starting at a certain age in their life, it has definitely helped discoverability. Um, there is no set formula, Aditya. Each one has a different path and story. Um, for few, self-publishing has worked wonders. For few, it may just not work, and they might want to be introduced to these prestigious publishing houses that you've mentioned, and there are others too that you've not mentioned in your list. Um, of course, the publishing houses have their own vision, have their waiting list, have their own priority list. But as I understand, most publishing houses have space for new voices, for young voices. So you must reach out to them, explore them, and if you're not getting a good break, do explore self-publishing. That's also not a bad option. So each one with their own permutation combination. You have to weigh which works best for you. Sneha Agarwal, ma'am, what are your views on publication controversy of the book The Assassination of Mahatma Gandhi by Nathuram Godse? Um, Sneha, I think, when I'm talking about the legal machinery, law essentially is not an obsolete uh, intellectual paradigm. Law in itself has a epistemology and an ontology that undergoes shifts with ages, times. It is constantly evolving. So I would have to, number one, read the integrities of this case you're talking about. Um, I only know it from a surface, and I understand that whatever decisions were taken in the framework of history were in accordance with those frameworks in history. When we're talking about the contemporary discussion, the history has undergone change 75 times since we got our independence or more. So we have to understand this and through this paradigm shift of so many decades. So maybe because this is essentially a very sensitive issue, I would prefer to speak on it when I'm well prepared on it. Any lay remark, any walking remark, and swift remark on it will not make, we would not do justice to the gravity of this case. But yes, what remains is that the legal, the the epistemology and ontology of the legal machinery undergoes historical changes, and we need to understand a particular case through history and its changes. So Aditya asks again, how does the factor of selecting the right audience play with reference to Indian publishing houses? How big a challenge is that? Selecting the right audience, I didn't quite understand. Are you talking about the readership? If you're talking about the readership, then we don't select our readership. We can never do that. But yes, we have a okay. So we can't be selective about our readership. I think nobody who's out there to put out their product for sales would ever like to be restricted to a certain kind of audience. We would want to have newer audience every day, and that's the confidence that emanates from being Atmanirbhar. When you've had an editorial policy that had stood through 60 years of the publishing houses in a 75-year-old independent country, you definitely want to talk to newer voices, newer ideas, newer readers. So we don't select our audience, number one. The audience selects us. And we have to make sure that we are relevant to to as many reading circles as possible. We are able to cater to as many readerships as possible. I think that would be a very important point for me while making editorial decisions. uh, the challenge is of course huge, because we are talking about over 22 active reading and writing cultures. So you imagine, if you are looking at a Venn diagram, there are so many subsets that are overlapping with each other in our country. So you will be shocked to know that the kind of the amount of books we are selling in Bihar, the Hindi books, it's almost the same amount of books that we are selling in Kerala. um, it opened my eyes to this wonderful country I'm living in. 10 years ago when I joined the industry, I said, how is this even possible? But the kind of scholarship that works on Hindi language literature, Hindi language authors in Kerala, for example, is as good as it's in Uttar Pradesh or Bihar. So when we are talking about, for example, Marathi language, some parts of Rajasthan are also using their textbooks as a media of instructions for the primary schools or lower primary schools. So you see, our linguistic system is so huge that we can never put a finger, or we can never put a line on our audience ever. It's just that we have to keep reinventing ourselves. We have to keep thinking innovatively and stay relevant to as many readerships as possible. So for example, for me, what really works is, my aim is that when a child holds his or her first book till the time a gentlewoman or a man reads his or her last book in the life, my publishing house should be able to cater to everybody in between these two stages. So I don't know how far I'm successful, how far we have been able to do this, but our larger aim is this: that we should be able to have a book for everybody in the society. So this is our audience, and we cannot select them ever. God forbid, in this country where there are so many linguistic systems that are constantly overlapping on each other. So I think This answers the last question Aditya had. Um, I think I have
Ma'am,
answered most of them. Yeah.
ma'am, I would lastly like to ask, you being a great publisher, what advice would you give to the young and aspiring, and also something about a career in in publishing?
So, publishing house is one place where various streams of education melts into becoming a great alloy of a book. So, a publishing house, for example, needs a person with great command over language. A publishing house is a place which needs uh, a person with great publicity skills. A publishing house is a place which can utilize an engineer who can look into the mechanics of a printing press. A publishing house is a place where we need copy editors, proofreaders, designers, where we need proper sales heads and sales online and offline sale officers. A publishing house is one place where we need operation specialists that can take care of the fact that a book reaches safely to its reader in whichever environmental condition it travels through. India has a diverse demography. Imagine it's raining heavily in Assam. So when I am recruiting a person who takes care of my dispatches, that person has to be intelligent enough to understand that the books from our publishing house travel through all demographies, climates, and therefore they should not be damaged ever. So this is Atmanirbharta. This is the kind of human resource a publishing house can attract. So publishing house needs all kinds of talents, all kinds of inputs in terms of human resource, in terms of skills. So each one of you, I don't know from whichever educational backgrounds you are from, if you name your educational background in the comment box, I can specifically tell you which
Uh,
department will be the best for
ma'am,
you. So
ma'am, from legal professions.
legal profession, oh, we need our copyright experts all the time, because the copyright law underwent edits, underwent revision in 2012 with the intervention initiated by Mr. Javed Akhtar. And there are some amazing changes that have been brought in. But we are in a digital era where I at times feel, when I look at the copyright document, Copyright Act of India, I feel that a lot has to be taken into account in that document. Also, now that I leave you all with a question. Please help me with it. In the Copyright Act, that the document that we have right now with us, um, do find out how many times or in which context the word publisher is mentioned in the document. It is a great trick question. Do find out and get back to me. I will have a huge reward for you if you try to get back to me and tell me in what context and how many times the word publisher comes in the copyright document. And uh, we will then sit and talk how this intervention from your end can really help this document. Trust me, we are in the age of Netflix and Amazon Prime. We are in the age of OTT right now. So the requirement for the legal advisors, for the lawyers that can look into the copyright copyrights, moral rights, documentary rights, film rights, all kind of rights, and the interest of the author, the publishing house, commercial interests of everybody involved. It's even more important and crucial right now, because plagiarism is just not about picking up a paragraph from anywhere and pasting it somewhere. It has become um, more I'm just missing the right word. It has become more fine, it has become more intangible. The ideas are plagiarized now, And we are living in an age where a production company can work in an idea without giving the proper credit to its original I wouldn't say an author, but an incubator, a group of people, or maybe a group of authors who've been working on that idea. So the legal team is needed more than any time in history now. So if you are interested in the copyright question, please get in touch. I will be more than happy to have a separate discussion with all of you. Send us the link for the feedback form. What about the feedback form? Okay, I don't know about the feedback form. Sorry, I think the organizers can help you with this. So I think that brings us towards the end of our session. Is it?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. It was a wonderful experience to have your to have your to have you make us understand about how India needs to get self-reliant. I also want to thank Rai Singh ji, Mrutyunjay ji, Shivam ji, Pratik ji, Aditya ji, and Shubham ji for the wonderful guidance. And lastly, I would want to say, um, from today, we need to take a lesson from our respected guest and try to make this country a self-reliant country. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Think India, for having me over. And really, I think we are a very unique economy. We are a very unique country. I realized this when I was studying in the UK, and when I had an opportunity to work in London. I realized that there was so much happening in my own land. Why waste my time here? Let's go back. And I, not a single day, I have respected my decision more, and I feel totally blessed to be working in the Indian languages ecosystem, to be working in my country, to be working for my own languages and my own authors. So I hope that each one of you, when you get to the field, you will be seeing and you will be contributing in a very beautiful way towards building our own country stronger and brighter. Thank you. Namaskar.